Hello, I'm your host, Aiden Rood, and thank you for watching America Tonight. Tonight I have a letter from Dr. Benjamin Rood. He's going to read the letter addressed to the Electoral College of the United States, who will cast their vote for the President of the United States on December 19th. Afterwards, I will have a conversation with Dr. Rood here in the studio. Thank you.
To the electors, on December 19th, you will make an important decision, perhaps the most important in your lives. You will choose the next President of the United States. For the 5th time in our country's great history, the electoral vote has failed to represent the choice of the American people. Mr. Trump lost the popular vote by over 2 million votes. In the past, electors chose to accept the results of the Electoral College, but I believe that now, at this moment in our history, you must choose differently. In the best interest of our country, I ask that you vote against Donald Trump as the majority of Americans did on November 8th. I do not ask this lightly, but rather ask that you truly consider the implications of Mr. Trump's divisive campaign and then choose to preserve the integrity of our democracy. Do the unprecedented and make history. Choose the will of the majority. I make this request, this plea, because I love my country. I am so lucky to have been born into what I truly believe is one of the greatest societies in human history. In asking you to make such an important decision, I feel that I must tell you why I feel so strongly. There are many reasons that I believe that Donald Trump is unfit to serve as our next president. Flippant remarks about cutting the Department of Education, his choice of charter school advocate Betsy DeVos for Secretary of Education, and the $25 million fraud settlement for Trump University demonstrate that Mr. Trump places little value on education, which is bad for our children. Mr. Trump's choice for vice president raises concerns about bigotry toward LGBTQ community, a community just beginning to make great strides in achieving equality in this country. His blatant disregard for diplomacy and international cooperation, his many financial conflicts of interest, and his invitation to foreign entities to perpetrate cyber attacks on our country also demonstrate that Mr. Trump is not fit to be president. These are each important issues, but I believe that the issue with Mr. Trump goes much deeper. Throughout his campaign, Mr. Trump ran with the slogan, "Make America Great Again." I would like to explain why I am asking you to vote against Donald Trump on December 19th by describing 3 examples of how America is already great, but how that greatness is undermined by Mr. Trump's actions and words. First and foremost is our Constitution. Our forefathers crafted a Constitution that has become the cornerstone of our democracy and serves as an example for the rest of the world. I believe that the true genius of those who crafted and signed the Constitution rests in the fact that they did not claim to have all the answers. Rather, they set up guidelines so that we could improve and refine the Constitution to better serve all Americans. The very First Amendment highlights the greatness of these founding fathers. The First Amendment states, "Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people to peaceably assemble, and to petition the government for a redress of grievances." Our forefathers recognized the importance of these fundamental rights. They knew that freedom cannot exist without the right to express yourself without persecution. When Mr. Trump proclaims that he will open up libel laws so that he can sue them, the news organizations, and win lots of money, he is promising to use money and power for censorship. He would use his influence to quiet the press. Mr. Trump has also suggested placing restrictions on Muslims and targeting mosques for surveillance. These ideas are in direct contradiction to our fundamental right to express our religious freedoms. Mr. Trump's disregard for the First Amendment demonstrates a lack of respect for our rights and freedoms as Americans. The importance of this point has been soundly voiced by both Republicans and Democrats alike. As reported in a story by CNN, members of the Republican Party responded harshly to Mr. Trump's comments regarding Muslims. Former Florida Governor Jeb Bush tweeted, "Donald Trump is unhinged. His policy proposals are not serious." South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham tweeted, "Every candidate for president needs to do the right thing and condemn at real Donald Trump's statement." We cannot elect a president that would trample our fundamental rights. Fortunately, guaranteed within our Constitution, the final choice for president has yet to be made, and you, the electors, have the opportunity to right the ship and vote against Mr. Trump. The second thing that makes me proud to be an American is the great men and women throughout our history that have fought for equality. How can any one of us truly be free if our neighbors believe us to be inferior because of our race, our gender, our sexual orientation, our religious beliefs, or our physical or mental disabilities? Leaders throughout our history have believed in the ideal of equality. Leaders during the Civil War recognized that our country is stronger when unified and when all people are free from forced servitude. Within the last century, the women's suffrage movement brought voting rights for women, the civil rights movement ended segregation, and the gay rights movement brought about marital rights for same-sex couples. These are only a few key victories for freedom that have been gained through the hard work of visionaries within each of these great causes. However, it is important to clearly understand that the struggles of these groups and others is not over. We do not yet have total equality. Basic rights and freedoms are not currently guaranteed for all Americans. We are at a critical point in our history where we have the opportunity to strengthen individual freedoms, but that opportunity is imperiled by the actions, words, and choices of Mr. Trump. The presidential campaign orchestrated by Mr. Trump is increasing the racial divide in this country rather than bringing people together. This is evidenced by strong endorsements from the Ku Klux Klan, the increase in activity and thus visibility of white supremacist groups, the vilification of our neighbors to the south, and the increase in racially motivated hate crimes following the national vote. The manner in which Mr. Trump has used people from different racial, ethnic, and religious groups as scapegoats on which to blame the current problems of the working class creates division amongst American citizens as well as between neighboring countries. His hateful speech divides us, and it is division that makes us weak. Bigotry does not have a place in civilized society. We must be better, and we must not raise up those who would tear others down. The fight for gender equality has also been harmed during the Trump campaign. Men must respect women as equals. Fathers must set examples for their sons. Male leaders must set examples for all. Yet Mr. Trump routinely denigrated women throughout his campaign and has a long history of verbal abuse and inappropriate language toward and regarding women. Mr. Trump bragged about using his position of authority and power to grope women without consequences. Mr. Trump has made sexually inappropriate remarks about his own daughter. He has repeatedly demeaned contestants of the Miss Universe pageant, female news anchors, basically any woman who stands up to him and mentions his inappropriate behavior. Mr. Trump is not an example to follow. He is not a man of integrity. How can we allow him to be the figurehead of our country? Two of the most important events in the last century are the U.S. involvement in World War II and the end of the Cold War. Had the United States not entered into World War II and formed alliances with countries throughout the North Atlantic, the impact and terror of the Nazi regime may have lasted longer and spread further. Instead, we worked together with other nations to defeat the authoritarian regime that had taken hold in Europe. Unfortunately, authoritarianism continued gripping the Soviet Union and Eastern Bloc countries, but we and our allies held strong and maintained our belief in individual freedom and democracy. When I was 13, the iconic fall of the Berlin Wall symbolized the importance of democracy and personal freedom as authoritarianism faded. Imagine now, a charismatic speaker rallying large crowds. A decade of war and recession have battered the spirit of the people. Hope is low. The charismatic man, failing to find support in cities, finds that the rural working class who has struggled the most and feels the most anger can be swayed by his promises. By vilifying specific racial, ethnic, and religious groups, he creates a scapegoat for people to blame for their life's difficulties. He tells them that they can have a better life, if only it wasn't for these other people. At his rallies, he inspires chants filled with hate and rage. He raises his hand out to the crowd and asks them to promise to stand with him, and the crowd salutes. The image I have just constructed describes the campaign of Mr. Trump. But it also, and this is frightening, describes the campaign of Adolf Hitler. While I do not believe that Mr. Trump will lead us toward genocide, I do believe that we must learn from the past. We must pay attention when people who wish to lead us follow a path or repeat the practices of evil men. Mr. Trump used fear and anger to sway people. He fed off prejudice and hate. In my lifetime, I have seen walls come down, but now the president-elect promises to build bigger walls. I have seen all manner of attacks on my country, and then watched the president-elect invite foreign cyber attacks on American citizens. I have seen our men and women in the military fight for my freedoms, and then listen to the president-elect speak of using jail, litigation, and loss of citizenship to suppress those freedoms. I know that America is hurting. I know that Americans are angry. I believe that many Americans checked off Trump's name not in support of his ideas, but because they are angry with the status quo, because they are angry with the establishment. They feel ignored. But choosing Donald Trump as our president will only make the problem worse. There are many reasons that I believe America is great. But throughout his campaign and through the decisions he has made since the election, I believe that Mr. Trump stands in opposition to the things that truly make this country great. There is no amount of money that can buy greatness. Greatness comes from how we treat each other, how we stand up for each other. For those who are hurting, healing cannot come by way of hate. So I ask that you, the electors, choose a path forward and not backward. I ask that on December 19th, you vote against Donald Trump. Sincerely, one very proud citizen of the United States of America.
Tonight I'm here with Dr. Benjamin Rood, a Winchester resident. As you just saw, he has had some opinions about the 2016 presidential election. I'd like to talk to him about his opinions. First of all, what inspired this video?
Well, as I've followed the election and watched the news on the campaign, like I've just become more and more disturbed by the negativity of the campaign, by just the way that hate is being used to sell something to the American people. I think it kind of puts a bad mark on our history, a bad mark on our country. And so I wanted to make this video because I wanted my voice to be heard. I wanted to tell the people that are going to choose our next president, I wanted to tell them how I feel, and that I just think that we need to make better choices. We need to choose people that are going to move our country forward. So that's why I wanted to make this video asking our electors to vote against Donald Trump.
Okay, could you explain in a bit more detail, now that you have some more time, what exactly is your problem with President-elect Trump and why you think he cannot be president?
Well, I think a lot of it starts with, how he ran his campaign. He had these massive rallies, and at each rally he would promise people to lock people up. He would promise people to kick people out of the country. He would, at every turn, he was working on people's fears. He was working on people's anger, and he was using that fear and anger to create this sense of hostility. He would, when people protested at the rallies, he would tell the crowd to hurt them. He would, be like, when punches were thrown, he seemed pleased by that.
Right.
So I think there was a really bad start to the campaign, and I just kept hoping, if he was elected, that he was going to change his tune, but he hasn't. He's chosen racists. He's chosen people that are just against a lot of the things that we believe in this country, in terms of equality, in terms of freedom, and I just think that it's a really bad choice to represent our country. Somebody that's gonna treat people in that manner.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So are you suggesting that the electors vote for Hillary Clinton, or are you suggesting they vote for someone else, or what do you think they should do in alternative to voting for Mr. Trump?
I mean, that's the obvious answer is that, well, if they don't vote for Donald Trump, then they should vote for Hillary Clinton. And this whole letter, I'm not advocating, Hillary Clinton for president.
Right.
It's really, for me, it's about the person that the country has chosen through the Electoral College is not fit to be the president of the United States. The choices he's made and the things he's said and done, even since having won the election on November 8th, demonstrate that he's not going to be a good representative of our nation. Now, there's other candidates that the electors could vote for, but I think that any vote for any other candidate other than Hillary Clinton is, honestly, I think it's just kind of a vote for Donald Trump without actually putting his name forward. So I guess that, yes, I have to say, please vote for Hillary Clinton when you vote on December 19th.
Are you saying that the millions of people that voted for Gary Johnson, Jill Stein, Evan McMullin, and other candidates in the election were also basically voting for Trump?
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Okay.
I mean, people placed their vote for President of the United States based on how they felt at the time, what they believed in at the time. Mm-hmm. And honestly, at this point, those candidates are not going to win the election. They just don't have the support. Mm-hmm. So this last decision is choosing who is really going to lead us forward in this country. Mm-hmm. So I don't think people threw away their votes. I don't think people made a vote for Trump by voting for one of the other candidates. But I think at this point the electors need to choose Hillary Clinton, because if they don't, it will be Donald Trump.
Right. Okay, what about the states where an elector voting against the way their state voted is illegal and they could face punishments?
You know, any law that says you cannot vote for who you believe in, that's insane. That's about as un-American as you get. I mean, the cornerstone of democracy is you can, vote for what you believe in. And, the fact of the matter is the majority of Americans voted for Hillary Clinton. They did not vote for, the majority did not vote for Donald Trump. And as for the electors, they have to vote their conscience. They have to vote. It is their responsibility, their constitutionally given responsibility to look at all of the candidates, to look at the results of the election on November 8th, and to choose the person that they think will be the best person to be the president of the United States. And if that means they have to go against these state laws, then I think that is the right thing to do. I don't understand how in this country you can have a law telling you who you have to vote for. I think that is, I think that's against what democracy stands for.
Okay, so you said that you mentioned the fact that Hillary Clinton won the popular vote several times. Do you believe that we should have that as our system, that the winner should be the one who wins the popular vote?
That's a really good question, and I'm not a political scientist. I don't really know what the right answer to that question is. I mean, clearly, more than 2.5 million people more voted for Hillary Clinton. I mean, that's a lot of people. And I do think that it's the popular vote, the majority of votes, that should be the most important. I think what the Electoral College does that the popular vote doesn't is it gives more of a voice to rural areas in our country, to states where there's not as large a population. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. But at this point in our history, we've been struggling through war, we've been struggling through recession, and a lot of people in poor rural areas have been hurt financially by all of these problems. And that makes them very angry. And anytime people are angry with their current situation, they're going to look to those who are in government at the time, and they're going to blame them. And right now that happens to be the Democratic Party, mm-hmm. who has the presidency at the moment. Mm-hmm. And so I believe that, there's a lot of anger toward the Democrats in rural areas. But I do believe that, it's good that voice is there.
Right.
But really, I mean, if it was even close, but over 2 million votes, I mean, mm-hmm. I think that the popular vote has got to hold more sway. If the popular vote can be won by millions of votes, but the electoral results still don't match the popular vote, mm-hmm. then maybe there's a problem there. And it's something that we're going to have to take a hard look at after. I mean, this is the second time in the last, 5 presidential elections. I mean, this has only happened 5 times in the history of our country, right? But 2 of those times have been in the last 5 elections. So I think that we're going to have to just take a hard look at that system.
Okay. Lastly, if you had 30 seconds to summarize why Donald Trump cannot be our president, what would you say? Start now.
Oh, okay. So Donald Trump uses hate and fear to rally people. Donald Trump is one of the most dishonest candidates I have witnessed in my lifetime. Like any fact-checking site, and he get like 20% or less of the things he says are true. And that level of dishonesty suggests that he's not fit to be president. And the choices that he makes shows that he really is having some racist tendencies, and that's a problem.
Okay. All right, thank you. That was Dr. Benjamin Rood, creator of the message you saw earlier. Thank you for watching.